You're listening to Crossword, where cultural clues lead to the truth of the word. And my name is Michele McAloon. And today I've got a little bit of a different interview. I am going to interview a woman named Olena Tregub. And Olena Tregub is with an organization called NACO. It is an anti-corruption organization in Ukraine. And I thought it would be important to talk to her because you hear a lot that's just not true about Ukraine, about how they've abused what we have given them, whether it's been weapons or money. And folks, I just have to tell you, it's not true. To speak to the Ukrainians now, they are in a desperate situation. There's no question about it. They have been overrun by a superior force. The U.S. has done a magnificent job of supplying them with weapons to defend themselves, and this is definitely being called into question once again. So please listen to this recording. Read a little bit about Ukraine. Ukrainians are not Russians. Russians are a whole different kettle of fish, so to speak. Ukrainians are European people. They come with a very complex history, a complex background. They are comprised of many different nationalities. But in the end of the day, they are absolutely European and Western people with Western values, valuing democracy, freedom, and independence. And Ukraine needs the United States, and the United States needs Ukraine. A safe Europe is a safe United States. And if you don't think that's correct, then I would really encourage you to review your 20th century history. I know I'll get a lot of pushback from this interview. I'll get a lot of emails. That's okay. I'd love to hear your opinion. And if you want to know more about me, I'm at bookclues.com. Thank you. God bless. Welcome, listeners. We have a real treat today. We are talking to a beautiful young woman. Her name is Olena Tregub. She is currently sitting in Kyiv, Ukraine. She is a Ukrainian. She's a very important person in Ukraine. She is a Ukrainian civil society leader, an anti-corruption advocate, an expert on defense reform, international relations, and sanctions policy. She is known for promoting her good work in good governance, transparency, accountability in Ukraine's defense and security sectors. And she currently is the executive director and secretary general of NACO, which is the Anti-Corruption Commission to Ukrainian civil society. Welcome, Olena. How are you?
Hi, and thank you very much for having me, Michelle. And I'm doing great. Keep fighting. As
Keep
all
fighting.
Ukrainians.
Tell us about what happened this past weekend in Kyiv. We've gotten reports in the West here that it was just a terrible bombing throughout the weekend. How did you fare during that? How did your family do?
It's very stressful, obviously, because, we observe in the last 2 months their attacks on Ukrainian civilian intensified, and there is analysis when we look at how many drones and missiles were launched by Russia since Trump came to office. Essentially, in a nutshell, they doubled. And we have now more advanced Russian weapon against us, and it's becoming harder for Ukraine to defend our civilians. So a lot of villages in the Kyiv region were affected, people died, and it's happening now, over and over in the recent months. And we think that it will become even worse in June. So, of course, those people who have kids, older parents and so on, they all very stressed about that. They're all just preparing to have some increased safety measures, to have a better bomb shelter and see what you can do to protect your family, your team in this situation.
Olena, tell your average person of what it's like to go through a to go through a bombing. I mean, most people in the West today, thank goodness, to include Europe and America, have not had that experience. When do you get, is there an air raid alert and you go somewhere, or what happens, if you don't mind telling us that?
Oh, yeah, sure. That's our routine now for the last 3 years, unfortunately. We have on our phones an app, and this app tells us when the air raid starts. In addition to this app, we have their street like alarm when there is this very unpleasant, unsettling sound of the air raid. It's like it sounds basically the same as, when London was bombed during World War II, this kind of sound. And then you decide whether you want to go hide in the bomb shelter, in the nearest bomb shelter, or you decide to stay in your house and just stay in your corridor or your bathroom where there are no windows. And this decision is based on information that you receive from multiple social media channels and the app. It says whether when it is dangerous. The dangerous when you need to go to bomb shelter is a so-called combined strike, which means that Russia has launched cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones all together, and many of them. And in this situation, it's better to go hide. If Russia just launched drones, nobody goes hiding because it's okay. So that's basically what happens. And then after every air raid, you think, okay, thank God I'm alive. My house is okay, my family okay, and keep going. But some other people turned out to be unlucky and they are dead. And what if you are dead next time? So it's like a roulette in a way, like where Russia is just like shooting people, and you never know who is going to die during this particular air raid. So that's the reality of Ukrainians.
Wow, that's something else. Let me ask you, you expect this to increase in June. Why is that?
Well, I think because it's very clear now for us that this imitation of negotiation, it's basically not happening. This, Trump call for peace is basically something which is completely hollow, and Putin doesn't have any intention to stop the war and have peace. And essentially, Putin wants to take more of Ukraine and to terrorize Ukraine to the maximum because he sees an opportunity now, because he knows Trump will not do anything bad to him, and he can try to grab as much of Ukraine as he can in the nearest month, and maybe then in autumn, in fall, he will be ready for negotiation, or maybe even not. Maybe he will keep going, and basically he will be very much also energized in the situation when the Biden assistance package will run out in June, and when we will not receive anything from Trump. For him, that would be great opportunity to, do huge damage and conquer more Ukraine. And he's waiting for that time. And already he's, like I said, using this situation of uncertainty when basically US said that they want us to stop fighting, to stop defending our country, but they didn't really put any leverage, any pressure on Putin to stop attacking our country.
Right.
So
right.
that's
Yeah.
essentially what's happening. And of course, because of that, it's going to be very tough in the coming weeks.
Olena, as a defense expert, can I ask you a question? If without U.S. armaments and U.S. aid, can Europe and other Western countries make up for the difference of the weapons that could potentially not be supplied to Ukraine?
Not fully. Europe definitely made decision to keep supporting Ukraine. And it's important for Europe to keep financing our own defense production, because Ukraine now makes 40% of weapons that we're using now in this war. We make it by ourselves.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And we use our own money to make those weapons, and we use some European money that we get through so-called Danish model, European Peace Facility. So this is good, and this should be increased, I hope. At least this is what Europe is declaring. However, there are many weapons which cannot be replaced related to air defense. We rely very much on Patriot systems that are protecting our cities from ballistic missiles. And there is nothing that can replace Patriots, and we need missiles for Patriots. And if we don't get it from US, Europe cannot do anything about it. So we need to figure out how we get this from US, whether Europe will buy it for us from US, or US will sell it to Ukraine, because as Trump said, he will not be helping us for free anymore. But this is something very critical, because without these defensive capabilities, our infrastructure, our civilians can be very, very much vulnerable. And that's why we need to continue our conversation with the United States so that these areas which are irreplaceable, they should be still taken care of.
Right. And a Patriot, just for my audience, a Patriot missile is basically an air defense missile. So what a Patriot does is it's an interceptor missile for surface-to-air missiles. And these are the missiles that Russia is now firing into Kyiv, into other parts of Ukraine. So that's why these Patriots are so important. And I know in the West, there's one of the problems is that there's fewer and fewer Patriots. They're not being manufactured at the pace that they should be manufactured at. And this is something that I agree with you that not only the United States, but we are uniquely in the position of being able to possibly produce more of these and provide more of these. These are critical weapon systems that Ukraine absolutely needs. Olena, tell us a little bit about your work in your organization. I believe it's called NACO, that you are the Secretary General for. Tell us what you do.
Yeah, sure. We established this organization in 2017. It used to be part of Transparency International, anti-corruption global movement, where we focused only on defense and security issues. So the idea of NACO is to reduce a corruption risk in the areas which are critical for Ukrainian national security. And I entered this area together with my colleagues, my team, completely from a different sector. I worked in the Ministry of Economy, in finance, but I understood that there is a gap in Ukraine when it comes to defense and security, where civil society can step in to help reform this sector to make our country more capable to defend itself. Because already, remember, the war started in 2014, and I was very worried that Ukrainian army, Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, Ukrainian defense industry is not reforming itself and preparing itself enough to be able to repel Russian aggression, to be able to deter Russia. And we did not deter Russia. The West didn't deter Russia. Ukraine didn't deter Russia. Russia did start full-scale invasion in 2022. But my organization, we have been preparing for this. We've been writing laws, like changing the system of defense procurement, for example, to make it more effective, faster, more competitive. We were helping to make laws about Ukrainian defense industry reform, how to change our state-owned companies into joint ventures, to attract foreign investment, to make better weapons, to have less corruption, to have better investment climate for this area, because we understood that this is all very crucial for us to defend our nation. And there is nothing more important than that, because if you don't have security, if your country is invaded, then what's the point of any other reform? And that's why our group of people not from military sector came into this sector with this mission to help protect the country.
Olena, help me explain something. So corruption's endemic in any society where you have money, or money that is not transparent, or money that is not accounted for. Was this a unique problem to Ukrainian Defense Force, or is this something that has been evolving? Tell us a little bit about, I guess, the history of corruption in Ukraine and why this had to be tackled. And again, I'm not just pointing out Ukraine. Anytime that there's money, there is the potential for corruption, and transparency is always needed.
That's right. I consider corruption the legacy of the Soviet system because in Soviet system there were no mechanism, for example, for media oversight, civil society oversight, parliamentary oversight, all these democratic systems, checks and balances, they did not really exist in USSR.
Let me ask you a question. A lot of times in the US, we hear that, well, not all the money is the Ukrainians are selling weapons, or the Ukrainian politicians are taking US money. Can you disabuse us of that and tell us that I know for a fact, and from dealing with the military here in Wiesbaden, that in fact is not happening? You on the ground, can you say that you have not seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. This of corruption, it is used very often by Russian propaganda in order to undermine support for Ukraine outside Ukraine, and also undermine the morale of Ukrainian society and the military inside Ukraine. And therefore, when there were actually projects run by several organizations to basically verify all social media stories about corruption in Ukraine, not just in the military, but overall. And it turns out that 60 or more percent of those stories were fake. There are true stories about corruption. However, these stories, they are actually, in my opinion, positive, because these are stories of investigation and of prosecution of like corruption, against corruption, when we found civil society journalists, when we found that something was wrong and people were dismissed, people were arrested. And it was never around the topic of weapons, because in terms of weapons, especially the weapons that we receive from partners, it's impossible to do corruption there because there are so many checks there. And plus, it is such a critical area where, Ukrainians are fighting for their life, and all the military, they need these weapons because they are on the front line and there is scarcity. So can you imagine, like, somebody would start selling, HIMARS or Patriot?
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
first of all, there are systems how US, for example, is tracking its own weapon. There are people on the ground from the Department of Defense who are looking at where these weapons are, how they are used. There are, so many checks of this. So, and this never actually happened. But what happened is we had situations when, for example, the codes for the military were procured not in the right way. And we paid our own money from our own Ukrainian treasury to buy those codes, and that was not good. And we investigated this, and there was a criminal case, and people were punished. Or we had a case when the eggs for the army were procured at very high price. This was a huge case in Ukraine. People were very angry in society. Because of that, Zelensky had to dismiss our Minister of Defense, Reznikov. We had to create anti-corruption council of the Ministry of Defense, because now we have a body where there are people, trusted people from society with very good, clean reputation, who are sitting and overseeing the procurement process for non-lethal items. Because this is huge, to feed the army, to dress the army. This is huge budget item. And we are now overseeing it, so it didn't happen again. And we now decreased the price of procurement for those items. We created 2 new procurement agencies, which was also demanded by society. Those agencies, they operate separately from the ministry. so that there are less political influences, some corrupt influences. They are professional people, one agency buying food and non-lethal, and another agency buying a weapon. And we're creating supervisory boards for those agencies, like regular audits, all these mechanisms, of due diligence and compliance. So all that reform is happening now during full-scale war. And this is because Ukraine is a democracy. All these corruption stories, they come to public domain. We discuss them. We have journalists who are free to investigate any problem. Nobody gets in, trouble for that like it is in authoritarian countries or Russia.
Right.
And we keep doing that. We keep fighting corruption. That's why I think the fact that we have our democracy is alive, we keep fighting, it's a good thing. Because I wouldn't say that Ukraine is a corrupt country. I would say Ukraine is a country that is fighting corruption.
Right, right. And, and I think the United States can pretty much say that too. Oh my goodness. Yeah, one of the problems is you see just some crazy online stories about Ukraine. And unfortunately, some of our politicians have used some of those stories to justify not doing anything or not supporting Ukraine. One of the worst things that I think has happened in the United States in regards to Ukraine is that it's never been explained really from the top down to the American people why Ukraine is important and why U.S. has an invested interest in keeping Ukraine free and democratic. And that really it's a story that is not well told in the United States. Elena, if you could talk to the average American, what why is Ukraine important? Why is it important to Europe? Why is it important to the West? Do you think about these questions?
Of course, I think about these questions every day, and I absolutely have no doubt why Ukraine is important. It's very clear that Russia is not happy about collapse of USSR. And Russia wants to go back in history and restore some form of modern empire, USSR, whatever they call it. And without Ukraine, as Zbigniew Brzezinski said, there will be Russia will never be an empire. But with Ukraine, Russia is an empire. And this is what Russia wants. Russia wants to control Ukraine, Belarus, eventually Moldova, take back the Baltic states, the former USSR in their Caucasus and Central Asia, because Russia has this problem with revanchism, with revisiting history. They don't want to let Ukraine exist as a separate country. And they are very angry that Ukraine did not support their authoritarian model that Russia has. And Ukraine is very democratic. We regularly change our presidents. We love freedom. We want our people to have choices, to have their rights respected. And this is against the Russian model, because Russia is a country that oppresses human beings. And, where the state, mafia state led by Putin, decides the fate of everybody. And Ukrainians made choice. We don't want to be part of that system. So for United States right now, if United States betray Ukraine and show that for them, it doesn't really matter that Ukraine is a free country and people in Ukraine, they fight for freedom, for democracy, to protect the values that we share with Americans, with Europeans. If US will show that we don't care about these things, and we, JD Vance said, I don't care what happens to Ukraine one way or the other, if that happens, it will undermine American leadership in the world, because America needs right now to build alliances with democratic, like-minded countries who have the same values as America, and who will trust America, who will help America build supply chain for the modern economy with artificial intelligence, and all these new microchips that we are, all this new digital era that we're entering. America needs trust so that American products and American weapons and American software is bought by people in the world because they see America as a leader of free world. And if America loses this soft power, this image, it will be detrimental not only for American economy, when America will become more isolated and will be less capable to disperse the technology, their new products that America is making now. But also, it will create conditions when other powers that are authoritarian rise, and they will use their military power in their regions just because they think America is not there anymore. And that's why Asia which is a critical area for US interest, will become very vulnerable with Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, who will be in very insecure position. And that's why, overall, this whole situation around war with Ukraine can lead not only to some damage for average American in their level of wealth, income, welfare, but even their security. Because if the whole transatlantic security alliance collapses and we have wars in Europe, including NATO member countries, there will become very insecure place that will, affect America, because America is part of this architecture. And even though this architecture, many people, of course, would say it doesn't exist, it has collapsed already. But people, countries, they are still watching how America will behave itself towards Ukraine. And now Trump is playing this game, dancing this dance, when he pretends as if he doesn't understand why Putin doesn't want to stop the war. But if he says eventually, okay, Putin doesn't want to stop, I will let him invade Ukraine and I will not intervene and I will exit from negotiation. That will be ultimate betrayal, which will be, in my opinion, against the interest of Americans.
Absolutely. And to my listening audience, Ukraine is not Russia. It is a very different country. It is a European country with European sensibilities. Russia's Russia, but Ukraine is not Russia. And, Olena, most people that I've talked to in the United States, and I said this before, but when it's explained to them, of course, they want to stand up for a country that is a democratic country, that is a free country, that is an independent country. That is in our American DNA. And unfortunately, it's gotten lost, I believe, in a lot of Russian propaganda and the leadership's lack of explaining the importance of Ukraine. And I'm not just picking on one administration, I'm picking on both of them at this point. To Americans who are listening, I really hope you think about this, do a little more reading on Ukraine, and actually contact your congressman or your senator and tell them that you're interested in Ukraine and supporting Ukraine, because a free Ukraine and a Ukraine that we support says something about our own country and what our values and what we're willing to support. And one of the things I keep reading about, Olena, is just the technology innovations that are going on in Ukraine. And I think one day that could be a very valuable partnership with the United States.
Oh, absolutely. Ukraine, even despite the recent, position of the new administration, Ukraine still feels very, close with the United States because of their common values. But it's important, of course, to make sure for the future that Ukraine remains the partner, that anti-American moods in Ukraine will not grow further because, that they are growing. Because I just want also to add to our previous topic is that, when Soviet Union collapsed, America was there. And Ukraine was their third largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And it was pressure of the US administration on Ukraine and on Kazakhstan, Belarus, to give away our nuclear weapon in exchange for some security assurances. And now, of course, because of that, Ukrainians, they feel very strongly about this possibility of betrayal, because it's America, you pressured us to disarm ourselves because you said that nothing would happen to us. Now
Right. Yeah.
Russia came to kill us, and you say it's not your business. But why you were there to begin with to disarm us then? Why you didn't let us build our own nuclear capacity? And all Ukrainians do now, they all regret giving up this nuclear weapon, because if we had nuclear weapon, we would never be invaded the way we are right now. That would deter the aggressive country like Russia. So it's important that Ukraine remains partners. And Ukraine is a very powerful army now. The most powerful army in Europe is Ukrainian army. We have combat proven not only our army, but also our technology. We developed within this last 3 years incredible huge number of new defense companies. There are around 800 of them right now. There are new inventions coming every few weeks when it comes to drone warfare, when it comes to electronic warfare, like how to stop the drone. And this is all highly, highly valuable knowledge and experience and technology of a country who knows how to fight the modern war. There is no other such country in the world except Russia. So if US wants to partner with a country who has this valuable knowledge, that country should be, I guess, Ukraine, because
Right.
Russia will never partner with US.
Yeah.
Because Russia has seen US as an enemy for centuries, and Russia, even not hiding it, even Trump claims that he will be Putin's friend, but Putin is having parade with a Chinese leader. And this is because they are more aligned in terms of their views on the world. And so this is why Ukraine is extremely valuable. For European security, Ukraine is not a problem. Ukraine is a solution, because with Ukrainian industrial base, with Ukrainian army, the whole continent can be protected. And also Ukraine can share with American counterparts our technology. And we actually, have a lot of American companies coming to Kyiv, asking us about our technology, about how we did this, how we did that. But in order to have this partnership, to build this trust, Ukrainians should trust Americans.
Right.
And this support should be unwavering.
Yeah, right. And you know what? You just had a great line there that Ukraine is not, it's not a problem, it's a solution. And Europe, I mean, despite all the nonsense that's going on right now, Europe is the United States' number one trading partner. So we have a vested interest in a strong Ukraine, a strong Europe. And, administrations don't last forever. New administrations come, and we will continue to have a heartfelt relationship with Europe and hopefully Ukraine. Olena, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of a very busy schedule, which I'm sure is anybody working in the defense sector of Ukraine. It was very kind of you to give us this time. Do you have anything last thing you would like to say?
Well, thank you, Michelle, for your work, for explaining Ukraine to your audience, to your community. I think that we will see in very near future how important this war is for every American. And they will see how important, it is to stay committed to your values, to your partners, not just in terms of Ukraine, but other countries in the world. And I know many Americans, they already feel this way, but it's important to explain, of course, to those who not very much into the political domain, like why they should care about a country which is across the ocean, far away, why this country is strategic. It is because it's not just a regional conflict. It's not just like some war for territory. It's not. This is strategic war that has direct effect on the history of United States.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
and
I,
this is, thank you for explaining this, why this is different than any other conflict now in the world.
Absolutely. It is. I'm convinced it's a war of strategic importance. And if we don't do well here, it's going to, if the US does not support Ukraine, if the US does not help Ukraine win, that it sends horrible message to our enemies in China and North Korea and Iran. And so we're tied together. We just are. And whether we want to acknowledge that or not, this is a key moment right now.
I want to add this point, very important matter, that Russia is not fighting against Ukraine alone. Russia is fighting now with China, with North Korea, and with Iran. Their military, their weapon is present in this war. They are fighting together, side by side. So this is already, it shows how much this axis of evil is united against Ukraine. They all look at America. All these countries look, what is America going to do?
Right. I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree. You know what? It's a world war against America right now. And
It
we
is.
can, I
Yeah.
don't care how you want to frame it, but this isn't Afghanistan. And this is, I think a lot of Americans fear that our continued involvement will be a Afghanistan that was 20 years long. Folks, that is just not the case here. Every war is important. This one is so important, and it has such consequences to it. And I don't think our American government is going to do a 20-year war. And that's not what Ukraine is asking us to do either. They're
Absolutely.
just asking us to repel a invader so that they can live their democratic life.
Absolutely. We
Yeah,
want to win this war and live a free and peaceful life. That's all we
absolutely.
want.
Elena, we pray for you. We pray for Ukraine, Slava Ukraine, and we hopefully you'll be willing to talk to us again soon about developments and things that are happening in Ukraine. You have a ready audience with us.
Yes. Thank you, Heroyam Slava, and God bless America. And thank you for inviting me.